Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 mini-series with the Los Angeles Angels. And we are at the 2029 All-Star break, and the Angels are having a pretty good year this year. 56-40 record, first place in the American League West as we try to win a third straight division title and get the team into the playoffs for a third consecutive season. We're also in a battle for the best record in baseball, which would give us home field advantage for as long as the team happens to survive in the playoffs. The issue with this franchise is that final part we just mentioned, though, surviving in the playoffs. Thus far, we have had pretty mediocre results in the last couple seasons when we have made it to the playoffs. Very early exits each of the last 2 years. Got bounced in the divisional series both times, even though we did win the division both times. We were actually swept out 3-0 last year by the division rival Texas Rangers. So although we are reasonably well positioned to get this team back into the playoffs this year, the goal is to have a longer playoff run than we've typically had. And with only about 2 weeks left until the trade deadline, we're focusing on trying to position this team to be real successful this year, given that this isn't going to be a long-term sim for us, although you never know how long we're going to end up going. And we are a win-now team. So last episode, we talked about the fact that we had traded away Dylan Cruz, who was a platoon left fielder for us, having a rough year, hitting just .209. Lorenzo Carrier and Jose Barrios to bring on Logan Gilbert. One of our better starters, Michael King, is now out for the season. Gilbert, at 32 years old, is no longer a dominant starter. 3-7 record with a 4.76 ERA, but he does lengthen our rotation by taking over in the number 5 hole for George Klassen. And if we were to have another injury for one of our top starters, he'd be a guy who could conceivably be a respectable 4th starter for us in the playoffs. Likely to be a free agent next year, or will be a free agent this coming off season, and unlikely that we'll bring him back. So he's a pure rental, but we felt that we helped our pitching staff by doing that. The issue is that we weakened our left field by trading away Cruz, even though he's had a very disappointing year for us. Left field has been the biggest problem for us, and although we strengthened the back end of our rotation a bit, we weakened our biggest weakness by moving on from Cruz. So we've made 2 more trades since then, earlier today, that we hope will put us in a better spot in left field. The first one was trading away Tadashi Okuda. You may remember this name. He is a guy that we picked up as an international free agent this past offseason, signed him to a minor league contract. He's hit 14 homers across A-ball, high A, and double A, and certainly has a profile that suggests as a major leaguer he'll hit some home runs and draw some walks. The big issue with him is he's not really good defensively, not that great in the clubhouse, and he struggles to make contact and is also going to strike out an insane amount of times. So although he's only 23 years old, don't view him as being a big part of our future. So we traded him away for a guy who's going to be a platoon left fielder for us in Daz Cameron, and he is not a particularly exciting guy to bring on board. Right-handed hitting left fielder. He's competent defensively, which we like. He's decent on the base paths and a decent bunter, but the bat is certainly nothing special. Ultimately, we just want him to take over as our right-handed hitting left fielder against left-handed pitching only. looking at his ratings, he looks like he can hold his own against left-handed pitching in the major leagues. Certainly doesn't have a profile that we'd want to be in the lineup every day, particularly for a position like left field where we're hoping to get some pop. But compared to the guys we have in AAA right now who could be a right-handed bat that could help us right away, Cameron, for better or worse, was kind of the best low-cost option we could come up with to take over for Cruz. Cruz certainly a more talented player, but Cruz hadn't done the job for us this year. So we decided to go ahead and make that trade. And then we made another trade as well where we are going to basically completely revamp our left field position. And that meant that we traded away the left-handed portion of the platoon, Emmanuel Rodriguez, who we had pretty high expectations for when we picked him up this year. He put up a 124 WRC plus for Minnesota a year ago, 263 average, 22 homers, 20 stolen bases. But he's just been a complete disaster for us at the Angels, hitting just a $175 with a 62 WRC plus. He's been well below replacement level. Only 26 years old and still has a bat, particularly against right-handed pitching, that we think can be pretty useful. Going to draw some walks and going to hit some home runs. But it just hasn't worked out with him for us. He was a well above average offensive player until this past year with us, where that 62 WRC plus has pulled his career mark for WRC plus down to just 102. But he did put up a 108 in parts of 4 years with the Twins before we pick him up. So don't love that we're moving on from him. You'll see the guy that we got in return actually is having a much better year than Rodriguez, but is similar age and a similar profile and going to be costly next year since he's having a big year right now. And I don't know that he's necessarily that much better than Rodriguez, but just felt like Rodriguez clearly wasn't working out with us. And we're just going to flip both sides of the platoon completely with these trades that we've made. Unfortunately, to bring the guy on board, it wasn't just a one-for-one swap. We also had to give up minor league utility man David Murshey. He was a guy who was an important utility infielder for us at times. Last year, though, he hit just a $182 for us. Ended up spending all of this year in AAA. Like his speed, like his defensive versatility and some pretty good quality. Not much of a power hitter, but he has had a good year for Salt Lake this year. But at 26 years old, with the fact that we signed Wakabayashi for our infield this year, and we've still got Volpe and Neto around in more utility-type roles when everyone's healthy, and we've also had the youngster, Mr. Gamble, until he got hurt, come up and play really well. Just didn't feel like there was a spot on the team for him as a utility infielder, so we were willing to include him, even though he is a guy who's got another option year left after this and would have been some good organizational depth. And we also had to include a decent relief prospect, Tim Betterton, guy who we drafted a couple years ago, put up a 2.35 ERA for us in high A ball this year. You can see White Sox have already promoted him to AAA, and we think he could be a pretty solid major league pitcher, not an ace by any stretch of the imagination, particularly because he's actually a reliever and not a starter. But he's a guy who definitely can throw in the triple digits, has some positive personality traits, and has a cutter that is borderline world class, so we think his stuff can be a little above average, average movement, average-ish, but perhaps a little below average control. Didn't see him being a huge part of our future, but we had to include him to get this deal done. The guy we got in return, Carlos Jorge, his batting profile, honestly, doesn't necessarily look that great compared to Rodriguez. He's a better contact hitter, which certainly helps, but less power. Certainly not as good an eye. But there are positives for Jorge. He's a little bit younger, got better speed. And although when we look at his defensive ratings, he's not, in theory, as good in left field. He actually is a guy who has won a couple of Gold Glove awards in left field for the White Sox over the last few years. Now, winning the Gold Glove in left field is, kind of being like the highest paid long snapper in football. You're still making a fraction of what a good backup quarterback makes, and the value of being a Gold Glove left fielder certainly isn't anywhere near the value of being a Gold Glove shortstop or center fielder or catcher, at least in my view. But he's certainly been competent defensively, and when we look at his ratings, it looks like he can handle himself against right-handed pitching. He's got a little bit of pop there, has pretty dramatic splits. You can see he's got the home run power against righties, where he's got a 60, and he's a 40 against lefties. But he's actually a better potential contact hitter in some ways against right-handed pitching, where his overall contact rating is a bit higher and his BABIP is much higher, even though he is going to strike out more. So some pretty sharp splits between his ratings against righties and lefties, but we would envision him only starting against righties for us. And he is a guy who's having a monster year for the White Sox. He was just named an All-Star. He's a guy who over the first 3 years of his career was slightly above average offensive player, and he has just exploded this year, put up a 147 WRC plus for the White Sox, 28 home runs already by the All-Star break. He's stolen 22 bases. My fear when I look at his batting ratings and his overall profile and how it compares to Emmanuel Rodriguez, who we just traded away, is that, as I said, Jorge definitely a little better on the base paths. On paper, Rodriguez, I'd say a little better defensively, although Jorge does have the Gold Gloves, so he's been better, at least in terms of his view. Rodriguez definitely better eye, not as good with the contact, similar power. My fear is that we're going to have traded Rodriguez away, and all of a sudden he's going to become the guy he was last year in Minnesota for the White Sox with the change of scenery, and that bringing Jorge on board, who's having a monster season, but the ratings suggest he's playing way above his head, that all of a sudden he's going to be hitting like Rodriguez the rest of the way for us. I hope that's not the way it goes, but what we had in left field with Cruz and Rodriguez was definitely not working. So to some degree just felt like we needed to make a change, and now we're going to have Jorge taking over against right-handed pitching for Rodriguez, and we will ultimately have Cameron taken over in left field against left-handed pitching for Mr. Cruz. I don't think it's possible for the production from these two new guys to be as bad as it was from Rodriguez and Cruz over the first 96 games of the season, but I've certainly been wrong about things like this before. But ultimately feel that we've helped the pitching staff a bit, and we've at least made a change to the worst position on our team in left field. Whether or not we'll get more productivity, we'll find out going forward. Whether or not we're better on paper than we were beforehand, I can't say I'm 100% confident that we are. But again, what we were doing just wasn't working, so felt like it was time to make a change and try something different. So when all is said and done, as I noted, Gilbert's going to take over as our fifth starter now, move Klassen back into the bullpen. The hope is that Schwellenbach, Bradley, Scott, and Riley will all be healthy and productive and able to be our four-man rotation if and when we get to the playoffs. But if any of them get banged up, or if Christian Scott remains ineffective, Gilbert could be in the mix. Position player-wise, a couple of changes. Obviously, Jorge taken over in left field. Cameron taken over in left field against left-handed pitching. And we recently brought up Josua Lugo, who's going to play first base for us for the time being against left-handed pitching, move Guerrero to DH. Hopefully, in the not too distant future, we'll have Sean Gamble back early August, and we'll have a roster decision to make. I would assume that Lugo or Cameron, depending on how things go, are the most likely players that we might be looking to move on. Lugo certainly has options left. Cameron, unfortunately, is out of option years. We'll see how he does over his first couple weeks with us. We're certainly not committed to him for the long term. He's really a rental as a 32-year-old who's kind of a borderline major league player. But the hope is that since Cruz was hitting just 209, playing primarily against left-handed pitching, we can get similar, if not better, production out of Cameron going forward. So we've got a few days off now for the All-Star break. When we get back, we're going to have 3 in Houston and 3 at Colorado. And then we're going to finish up the month of July with 4 against the Rangers at home, and then 2 against the Braves at home before we get to the trade deadline and the beginning of August. 2-game lead on the Rangers and a 4-game lead on the Astros. So we'll definitely have an opportunity to open up a gap on the teams chasing us in the division over these next couple of weeks, or perhaps head into August and head into the trade deadline in an even more competitive race in the AL West if we're not that successful against Houston and the Rangers. And we won 2 out of 3 in Houston coming out of the All-Star break. Unfortunately, we did miss out on the sweep in the final game of the series yesterday, but still taking 2 out of 3 against a division rival that's chasing you in the standings, always a positive thing. Opened up another game lead on the Astros as they dropped to 5 back. The Rangers still only 2 behind. Our 58-41 record, still the best in baseball as we sit here on July 23rd, about a week before the trade deadline. Did get an offer that didn't stink, and it's always nice to get offers that don't stink. Not something that we're going to do because they want our ace, Spencer Schwellenbach, in return. 5-6 with a 3.72 ERA this year, so not quite as good as he was a year ago for us. The Reds offered minor league starting pitching prospect Matt DiValerio, only an A-ball this year, where he's 2-4 with a 4.30 ERA, but he's only 20 years old. Certainly looks like if he reaches his full potential, he could be a pretty solid major league starter, a good number 3, possibly a number 2 if he reaches his full potential, and he does have high work ethic. But given that we are a win-now team, not a trade that we would do. I think even if we weren't a win-now team, it's still borderline. Schwellenbach's going to be making pretty big money next year, expected to be making $14-15 million. Also going to be turning 30 years old next season, so it wouldn't stink to replenish the team with a youngster, but given that we are trying to compete to win it all this season, just ultimately didn't think that it made sense to think all that seriously about this offer. And things continue to go reasonably well. We took 2 out of 3 in Colorado, so to win 2 straight road series is a positive thing, although we missed out on the opportunity for the sweep in the final game of each series. Split the first 2 against Texas, given that they're chasing us. That's not a horrible result, but obviously would love to take these next 2 against the Rangers. Unfortunately, little minor annoying injury right now to one of our new additions, Carlos Jorge. Groin tightness, going to have a moderate impact on his running, minimal impact on his hitting day to day. Hasn't been great since we brought him on board. We mentioned that our fear was the change of scenery was going to result in him performing more similarly to Rodriguez, and Rodriguez performing more similarly to him. And so far, that's definitely been the case. 3 for 21 with 10 strikeouts in his first 21 at-bats with us in Los Angeles. So he certainly hasn't been good, but we'll give him the next few days off. I don't want this groin tightness to turn into anything more significant, particularly since we're just a few days ahead of the trade deadline. And in the not-too-distant future, we're not going to be able to use the trade market to supplant and replace anyone who ends up injured on our team. And it's obviously an incredibly small sample size, but since we were just talking about Jorge, we'll check in on how Cameron and Gilbert have done in their initial stages with us as well. Cameron hitting just $154, so we mentioned that with Rodriguez hitting $175 and Dylan Cruz hitting $209. We didn't think it could get worse with the left fielders that we brought on board, and we've definitely been proven wrong on that front. Cameron has struck out 6 times in 13 at-bats, so similar to Jorge, not making great contact at all. Pitching-wise, Gilbert actually has been the bright spot. Got a win in his first start for us. Allowed 3 hits, 1 walk, while striking out 5 over 6 1/3 innings. So definitely helps stabilize the rotation there a bit. I guess I might as well just try to really make myself feel bad and go see how the guys who we provided the change of scenery to are performing. Emmanuel Rodriguez, actually not doing much with the White Sox, hitting just $174, but he does have 5 ribbies. 2 of his 4 hits are triples, so at least he's been productive when he's made contact for them. Cruz, in the very early stages of his tenure in Seattle, actually been pretty productive, 14 for 48, hitting .292, so he's now once again a league average offensive player. So Cruz performing pretty well. Fortunately, as we talked about, Kirby's done well for us. Given that we're checking in on some guys, not a bad time to check in this relatively short episode on how a few other key players through our history are performing. Mike Trout, who we traded away several years ago, at least having another healthy season. The Orioles, he's played in 96 games, 95 starts for them this year, 14 homers, 47 ribbies, basically is a league average offensive player and slightly above replacement level at this point. You can see the once brilliant outfielder is now primarily a first baseman for them, and his outfield ratings for a center fielder are certainly not great. Still fragile physically, but he is still plugging along. Adley Rutschman, who we had picked up in the trade for Trout, and then we traded away to the Braves when we brought Schwellenbach on board, having a really big year for Atlanta behind the plate. He's put up a 138 WRC plus and a 3.2 WAR for the Braves. 17 doubles, 3 triples, 6 home runs. Overall is an OPS of 830 on the year. So Clutchman at the age of 31, still pretty productive for the Braves. But as we talked about earlier, Schwellenbach is our ace at this point, and still want to keep him on board even when we're being offered some younger prospects for him. Opened up with the Rangers having lost a couple games in their previous series, 4-game lead on the Rangers and a 6-game lead on the Astros. as we sit here just 4 days before the trade deadline. And things went well on the field. We did take the final 2 games against Texas, so a third consecutive series victory coming out of the All-Star break. And we've won every series that we've played this month, although none of them were actually sweeps. We did lose to Cincinnati, but that was not a full series this month, just played 1 game against them. But since then, we've pretty consistently been taking 2 out of 3 against everybody, and now 3 out of 4 against Texas. So that is the positive thing as we sit here on July 30th. Now up 6 on the Rangers and 8 on the Astros in the American League West. And our .594 winning percentage remains the best in baseball. We're a game and a half up on the Cubs for the best record in the major leagues. And the Red Sox, the Orioles, and the White Sox are our closest opponents in the American League, and we are 4 games up on all 3 of those teams for the best record in AL. So feeling fairly confident that we're going to guide this team back to the playoffs, hopefully another division title, and when all is said and done, would love to have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, but with a game before the trade deadline, just took a pretty significant hit to our long-term hopes. The excellent rookie pitcher, Jake Riley, a torn meniscus, out for 4 months, so he is done for the season. Going to end the year with an 8-2 record, 2.65 ERA, 121 strikeouts in the 115 and a third innings that he pitched, put up a 3.7 WAR for us. He's a guy who we picked out of Stanford just over 2 years ago, despite having some concerns about his personality. We've had good results with him, spending a lot of time with him in the development lab over the years, and he's developed into a pretty respectable major league pitcher who we think still has the potential to be an outstanding major league pitcher. But unfortunately, his season is now over, and as a win-now team, that's going to certainly hurt us. Bringing Gilbert on board, feel better about that now because we're going to need him in the 4-hole for the time being and probably in the 4-hole for the playoffs. But it does leave the rotation without a left-hander, assuming that we move Klassen back into the rotation. The other option would be to bring Brock Selvage, who's been up and down a few times this year, bring him back up and put him as the number 5 starter, just so we do have a lefty in the rotation. We'll figure out what to do on that front shortly, but unfortunately, Jake Riley's season is over here in late July. Thought he had a chance to be potential back-to-back Rookie of the Year award winner for us after the great season we had from Rodriguez, another player who we picked as a first-rounder a few years back last season. But instead, Riley probably is not going to have done enough over the first 4 months of the season to ultimately win the Rookie of the Year with just 8 victories on the season, despite the fact that he was effective when he was healthy. So we are, as we talked about, moving Gilbert up into the 4-hole, Klassen back into the rotation, and then we bring Brock Selvage back from AAA. He's been effective in a couple of stints on the Major League team for us this year. But the depth that we were hoping we bolstered in our rotation with the addition of Kirby is certainly more suspect right now because King, Riley, and the reliever Ben Joyce are all gone for the year. Good news is we should have Sean Gamble back by early August, which will bolster the roster a bit. But we're going to spend a little time perusing whether there might be a final option on the trade block that could help our pitching staff, given that we are a win-now team. Take a look at the batters first, and it's kind of the group that we talked about in previous episodes. Brent Rooker, Bo Naylor, our old buddy Logan O'Hoppe, Austin Wells, the most highly regarded players by our scout that are available. Pitching wise, we felt like we got the best starting pitcher who was available when we made the trade for Kirby. Spencer Strider, who we thought about this past off season, out 2 to 3 months with a strained hammy. The Mets have put him on the IL. He's gone 5-6 with a 5.45 ERA. So perhaps a good miss that we didn't use money on Strider this off season. But at least as far as the guys who are actually available on the trade block, doesn't seem like there's any true impact starter for us to chase after. Still may be an option to bring on some depth. Definitely some established names, Dustin May, Walker Buehler, Hunter Brown, among others, who will investigate offline. But I don't know that there's actually going to be anything too compelling for us to do, which is unfortunate because we brought Gilbert on board. I think I called him Kirby. I was thinking George Kirby as I'm thinking about all of these former Seattle pitchers, but Logan Gilbert's the guy we brought on board. Brought him on board to kind of be the injury backup for us. We just kind of were hoping that we weren't going to lose our excellent young starting pitcher to injury within literal days of when we made that trade to bring Gilbert on board. So we did bolster the rotation, and it proves to be a good decision. But it's unfortunate that we need to take advantage of that rotational depth this quickly. And I've spent a lot of time offline investigating the players who might be available in the trade market, and the prices are just, in my mind, insane for guys that would, in almost all cases, be pure rentals for us. Did look, down at the likes of May, Buehler, Brown, who we talked about, as well as David Peterson and Kodai Senga, in terms of starting pitchers. And other than Walker Buehler, the prices were pretty insane. Basically required a big-time major leaguer or one of the top prospects in our system to rent one of those players. Buehler, as you can see, we actually can get for major players in our organization, but also in some cases guys that are less important to us and aren't as high-end prospects. But Buehler, with the profile he has as a 35-year-old, pretty average-ish major league pitching profile, fragile in terms of his injury proneness, had an ERA in excess of 4 this year. Definitely allowing some home runs with 17 allowed in 121 and a third innings. Just isn't all that exciting to me at this point. And we also spent a lot of time investigating some of the higher-end pitchers, particularly some of the left-handers, higher-end relievers, I guess I should say. But they are also the highest-end pitchers who are available. Definite focus on the lefties, as I noted. Prices, again, just insane. And a couple of key lefties, Aaron Bummer and Sam Hentges, who was with us just a few years ago and is across town in Los Angeles with the Dodgers. Both guys who used their 10-5 rights and or no trade clauses to say they didn't want to come join us. So not sure that we're going to be doing too much between now and the trade deadline, unfortunately. Feel like the moves we made to bring Gilbert on board and to shake up our left field platoons may be the only substantive things that we're able to get done. And I did find one option on the trade market. I don't even know exactly how we will use him, but the Yankees are rebuilding, and although the prices for just about everyone is more than I'm willing to pay on this trade market, the Yankees are willing to dump Austin Wells for a somewhat broader swath of players. I don't know that we've got a spot on the major league roster for Wells. Had one monster year for the Yankees a couple years ago in 2027 when he was an all-star and a silver slugger. But over the course of his career, he's been a slightly above average offensive player, which is what he's doing this year for them, despite hitting only .218 this year. Does have 14 homers and 262 at-bats. He's a versatile defensive player at this point. I mean, he doesn't play particularly valuable defensive positions, but he can play respectably at catcher and first, and he could be respectable in left or right with a little more training there. But admittedly, just borderline respectable in left or right. He does have option years left, though, so honestly, looking at his ratings and the fact that we just made the trade for Jorge and we've got Gamble coming back, I don't know that we need him as a left-handed hitter right now against right-handed pitching. I think it's very conceivable that he refuses a minor league assignment if we trade for him. But there's options out there that I'm willing to trade to rent him for the next couple of months. And maybe we'll be lucky and we can just send him right to AAA. Because if we were able to get him to become a competent defensive left fielder, it could give us another option if Jorge doesn't end up really working out. That left field position has just been a complete cesspool for us over the years of this playthrough. So I think I'm going to try to make a trade to reunite with another soon-to-be former Yankee in Austin Wells. Although, like I said, the real goal is just going to be to stash him in AAA as some insurance for us. He's making close to $14 million this year in the last year of a contract, set to become a free agent. Can't imagine that we'd have any interest in bringing him back or even be able to afford him. He is also a guy who's very popular, so we might get another little boost in attendance, which can't hurt. Still on target to lose about $65 million this year, so a little more attendance over these final couple months of the season wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And we did make the trade for Wells. We shipped them Esteury Ruiz, who was in AAA for us as a guy we signed as a minor league free agent. The issue is kind of as we anticipated. Wells refuses to take an assignment to AAA. So I think what we're going to do, and I'm probably going to regret this, Jorge is only now a few days away from recovering from that groin tightness, but we are going to place him on the 10-day IL. So we're going to cost ourselves a few days of him. He hasn't hit for us at all, though, and we're going to put Wells on the major league team, and we're going to try to see if he can learn how to play left field for us at the major league level on the fly. Feel like I'm just kind of desperately grasping at straws at this point. But it can't hurt to, well, maybe it can hurt. We're feeling like we're in a pretty good spot here with a 6-game lead in the division, 8-game lead over the Astros, and the best record in baseball, but having a guy who's not all that great defensively, playing a position that he doesn't really know how to play in the midst of a pennant race, certainly not an optimal solution, but hoping he'll make up for it with his bat. And we did, if you saw when we, I think, briefly clicked through this screen just a few moments ago, we did get a 1-point bump in fan interest by bringing Wells on board, so better than nothing, I guess. I would expect that this will be the last of what we do before the trade deadline, but you never know. There's still a day and a half until we get there. And we beat Atlanta 7-6 yesterday. So as we sit here at the trade deadline, extended the lead over the Astros to another game as they've now dropped 4 in a row. The Mariners surging with 10 consecutive wins, although they're 15 behind at this point. Yankees, even though they were rebuilding, are only 5 behind in the division. But is what it is. I don't think there's anything else that we're going to be able to pull off. I'd love to bolster the rotation, but the prices are just ridiculous for anyone who's out there, and there's not really a true difference maker for the rotation out there even. And we won the final game of the month against Atlanta, so the month of July ended up being very successful on the field for our Angels. Still 6 games up on the Rangers as we sit here on August 1st, and we are 4 games up on the Red Sox for the best record in the American League. Still a game and a half up on the Cubs for the best record in baseball, as we've won 5 in a row, but they've won 5 in a row as well. As we get ready for the final couple months of this regular season, Wakabayashi still second in the batting race. Andres Rodriguez and the recently acquired Carlos Jorge second and third in the league in homers. Rodriguez and Tucker second and third in ribbies. Jorge actually third in the league in steals. Rodriguez second in OPS. Rodriguez and Wakabayashi second and third in batter WAR. Pitching-wise, Taj Bradley tied for the league lead in wins, and Jake Riley, for the time being, tied for second in the league in pitcher WAR. Although, as we talked about, his season is now over. But feeling good about where we are in the standings. Taking a look at the team statistics, the 17-8 record that we put up in July was our best month of the season. 65-43, winning over 60% of our games, and we're still well below Pythagorean expectations, still really struggling in extra inning and 1-run games. But first in the American League in runs scored, first in the American League in runs allowed, and also a very good defense. So the team is doing well. Just don't love the fact that neither King nor Riley nor the reliever Joyce are going to be able to help us come playoff time. So as good as the pitching's been, definitely missing some important players, and no realistic prospects for any of them to be back to help us. I guess if we went to a World Series, maybe some small chance that Michael King would be available, but have a hard time imagining that we'd feel real confident putting him into a fourth game of the World Series or something, not having pitched in 4.5 months coming off of a torn rotator cuff. So I don't know if everything that we did is really going to matter at all. As we've talked about, brought on Gilbert, brought on Jorge, brought on Cameron, and most recently brought on Wells. But with the recent injury to Riley, I don't know if we come out of this trade deadline really any better than we were before we made all these deals. But we'll find out how the last couple months of the season go next time around. until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.